Janine Pirro, you can stay out of New York. We're not going to be crying ourselves to sleep if you don't want to live here. Stay in DC, stay in the swamp. Don't give me his skincare routine, okay? We do not want the Alex Jones skincare routine.
Tortured Poets Department, that was definitely not my favorite album. If you're ever up late at night and can't fall asleep, maybe I should take some Ambien, turn on the Tortured Poets Department. You will sleep like a baby. Welcome to Power Lines. I'm John Passantino.
And I am Oliver Darcy.
Today we're discussing Alex Jones's looming Infowars nightmare, Taylor Swift's big podcast debut, but first, right-wing media figures are cheering on Donald Trump's federal takeover in Washington, D.C. Oliver, happy one-year anniversary to Status. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Can you believe it's been 1 year of Status? It feels like a million years have happened in that 1 year, but it also feels like it went by like that.
It is pretty remarkable. I remember we were both at CNN together and you were leaving and I was very sad and I was honestly very worried. You were leaving like the big mothership of news where, you know, it's easy to be comfortable in a large news organization and go out and do something on your own it's really difficult. Starting a business and finding an audience is really tough.
It feels like we've been building the plane as we're flying it. But initially, especially, it very much felt like that. And in fact, it felt like in the cockpit when you're trying to take off a very short runway, that like all the buttons in the cockpit were like flashing red. And so now we're at a nice cruising altitude, I'd say, and it feels a lot better. So we'll see what year two brings us, John.
On the newsletter front, on the Status newsletter front, the first year you've done what, over 90,000 subscribers?
We're closing in on 100,000 subscribers. We have several thousand paying subscribers. And, we did 2 live events this year, John. We launched this podcast. And I think year 1 was really about getting Status on its 2 feet. And year 2, we're hoping, as you know, because you're in all those planning meetings, to grow the team and continue expansion. So I think year 2 will actually be quite exciting.
Yeah, looking forward to the road ahead. It's going to be an exciting second year. But first, before we get there, it's been a crazy week. This week, it's hard to miss that Donald Trump has decided to take over, a federal takeover of the Washington, D.C. police force and bring in all of these federal resources from ICE, DHS, the Secret Service has been deployed. We've got troops on the streets, DEA agents marching around. Some of them are even wearing masks, which has been, I think, surprising and also sort of, alarming and very authoritarian vibes, very Handmaid's Tale vibes, like just with these face coverings.
Why on earth? I don't understand this at all. In the United States, I have no idea why law enforcement personnel are permitted to wear masks covering their faces like they're raiding like a drug cartel in Mexico or something. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly disturbing that like there's this masked individual who is, either questioning you or pulling you over or possibly arresting you. And I think it just sort of adds this sort of very alarming, like faceless body of the government that is now patrolling the streets. And it feels like this has taken it. We saw something like this happen in LA with, Trump deploying the National Guard there. And now we're seeing that just really, it's like doubling down on that. And DC is such a small place, a very walkable city and community. Like you see people sitting at dinner in Georgetown and there are these federal troops marching the street behind them. And it's like, this is straight out of Gilead at this point. And the thing that has been surprising to me is while many people are alarmed by this, most news organizations are covering how unprecedented this is, scenes we've really never witnessed before, at least in our lifetimes. Right-wing media figures are thrilled to see what is going on. This is like their greatest dreams realized. Trump has his troops on the streets. He's cracking down on this big crime problem. And yet when we look at the data, and even under Donald Trump's own administration has released it this year, we see that crime across the country and specifically in Washington, D.C. is actually down from recent years pretty dramatically from the pandemic era when people, sort of broadly lost their minds. But at the same time, like, that does not seem to matter, right? Like, it is the point that's being taken here, which is that these liberal policies, this is a great chance to needle them and maybe change the conversation.
Well, why are you surprised? I can't believe, the only thing I'm surprised by is the fact that you would be surprised by the fact that these right-wing media figures are engaged in extremely dishonest rhetoric. That's the only constant here, but it is dishonest and we should call it out. And I thought what was actually, again, not surprising, but notable is that if you just go back to the Tea Party, this was like the "don't tread on me" crowd.
Right.
And they were the ones really alarmed over government overreach. And now they're the ones cheering on these masked federal agents, federal authorities, patrolling Washington, D.C. and detaining people and cheering on Donald Trump, clearly, I think, abusing his power here and making a very notable power grab and talking about now sending federal troops into other United States cities, having the military act as police across the country. And the "don't tread on me" crowd is cheering that on. I think it really highlights how, void the conservative movement these days is of any actual principles. It's all in allegiance to Donald Trump.
Well, that was where I'm surprised because just like you said, these are, generally speaking, the Charlie Kirks, the Megyn Kellys, the Sean Hannitys. These are your, let's say capital R Republicans who for, in a previous era would have demanded small government and restrained federal government. Let the states have control. Let local communities have control. If we want to live this way in Oklahoma, let us live, okay? Get out of here, Washington. But instead, we're seeing the opposite, which is that, like, as long as my guy's in charge, like, we love it. But could you imagine if Kamala Harris was in office right now and Kamala Harris was sending these, shock troops into Oklahoma City or I'm trying to even think, what is a major city that like Republicans even live in anymore? It's like they're almost always have Democratic mayors. Like if you get a large population, it's so like Oklahoma City or Tulsa. I can imagine they would be pissed. I mean, they would be losing their minds about how, these demonic forces of the federal government cannot be restrained. But instead, it's the opposite. And so, in fact, they're now using this as an exciting new way for their audiences to say, now that he's done this in DC, we should expand this to cities across the country. Chicago, Baltimore, LA, San Francisco. Like, let's just get all the liberal cities and own them and send this in. And we can just, revel in, in these communities sort of, enduring this like federal force, but it's for their own good.
I mean, I was watching this week the Benny Johnson show, who's, he's a happy propagandist for the Trump administration. So they invited him to the White House and he streamed his show from the White House. And he was describing, I lived in the Washington, D.C. area for some time. We were just in Washington, D.C., you and I, earlier this year. And I think, John, did you go for a run? You walked around the D.C. area. I walked around the D.C. area. I'm sure, obviously, there are areas in D.C. that are not very safe. But if you watch Benny Johnson, you would think that if I'm a tourist walking in Washington, D.C., that like outside the Lincoln Memorial, there's a very high probability of me being shot and killed or carjacked or whatever it may be. He was describing, literally, I mean, I'm not making this up. He was describing D.C. as a, quote, kill box, a hellscape, and said it was like a scar on the national consciousness. And I'm thinking, when I was in Washington earlier this year, it was a nice day. I think we all went for a nice walk, saw the monuments. You can go for a run. If my wife were walking around Washington, D.C. or going for a run on the National Mall, I wouldn't think twice about her safety. And you watch these programs, and this is the same thing they do to New York City. And I live in New York City. And they paint it in the darkest terms possible. And the audience, obviously, for this stuff is not living in New York City. They probably aren't going to Washington, D.C. But if you watch these programs, you think, wow, our greatest cities are unlivable now. And they're full of, crime and violent crime. And it's all, maybe it's by illegal immigrants. And it's just such a distorted picture of the reality on the ground. And the fact that they do this to allow Donald Trump to make this power grab, I don't know. I just think it exposes how void of any actual principles these people are. I mean, Again, we haven't even talked about it too. If you actually care about crime, where is Benny Johnson talking about how Donald Trump pardoned the cop beaters on January 6th? Where is Jeanine Pirro? They're nowhere to be found. This is not about crime. It's clearly about a power grab.
Yeah, and I do think actually that this messaging that they have, that they've been running for a long time, that cities are these decrepit, dangerous places, I think it does work. I think that is an effective tool in the propaganda tool chest. I believe it was Gallup who put out a poll not long ago that found that almost 2/3 of Americans believed that crime in the last year was actually up from the year before in 2024, when in fact crime statistics showed literally the opposite. And 90% in that figure were Republicans who viewed that crime is up. And that's because they're constantly being reinforced this view from either these personalities and from various news and media sources. And that's just fundamentally false. Like these crime numbers, both violent crime and others, have fallen dramatically from the 1980s and 1990s. And it continues to fall, which is fantastic news, except that's not really reaching people. And I was watching Fox this week, and they had U.S. Senator Markwayne Mullin on from Oklahoma. He says that because he's in Washington now as a senator, he drives around the city in his Jeep, and he's afraid to put his seatbelt on when he's driving around, because if he were to get carjacked, that he wouldn't be able to escape and run away on foot, because apparently, is that how carjackings even work? I'm pretty sure the way that a carjacking works is you take the car and you dispense of the people. We don't want the people. That'd be like a kidnapping, right? I think he's sort of telling on himself a bit there. But this is these extreme, ridiculous examples that we're hearing all the time. And a Fox News anchor said the same thing. Now, when I walk around the city, I look over my shoulder when I go to the mailbox or to the post office. And you're like, give me a break. You've got to be in a pretty seedy part of town, which is something we've always had in different cities and society.
I mean, I walk around New York all the time, in all parts of New York, and I feel perfectly safe. And John, you were finally here in New York City. When you were walking around, were you ever nervous? Were you ever looking over your shoulder, wondering like, ooh, what's happening here?
I mean, I can't say I was. I mean, it's
and you were walking around midnight, right? Like it's.
Yep.
I always feel perfectly safe. Not to say that there isn't crime. Obviously, when you have millions and millions of people in a very concentrated area, you're not going to ever have a crime-free environment. But I feel perfectly safe, walking around New York City. I actually feel safer walking around New York City. I'm going back to Fresno, where my family is, and I feel way safer walking around New York City or Washington than I do when I'm, if I were to be walking around Fresno at like 10 p.m. at night. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I thought, John, what was really notable this week was not only was Benny Johnson pushing propaganda for the White House and Fox News. I mean, that's expected. It's not something you would be surprised by. But what was surprising to me, or not, maybe I'm not even surprised by this, but again, notable, was that the Washington Post, under new opinion editor Adam O'Neill, sort of got in on the propaganda action. And so Adam O'Neill, who's, again, he just took over, he's the new opinion editor, not very well liked. He published a piece by Jeanine Pirro, who was running cover for Donald Trump, seizing federal control over Washington, D.C. And if that weren't enough, the editorial board of the Washington Post, which again, I don't even know who's on it these days, but the Washington Post opinion sections had this mass exodus. So the new editorial board at the Washington Post, the Democracy Dies in Darkness newspaper, basically published an editorial saying Trump's action to stop crime in DC, it's not going to work basically because it's temporary, like as if it just doesn't go far enough. And and that was really notable that they instead of condemning the brazen power grab, they were basically on board with it and just saying it just doesn't last long enough. And they took Donald Trump's, again, anyone who knows anything about Donald Trump knows he doesn't care about crime, given how many people he pardoned on January 6th, given the fact that he led an insurrection on the US Capitol, given the fact that he's talked at rallies about how in the good old days people used to beat up protesters. This is not a man who actually cares about crime. But they took him, the Washington Post took him almost at face value, like he's trying to stop crime in Washington, D.C. And I don't know, I thought that was remarkable from this newspaper. I cannot imagine the old editors, Fred Hyatt, running something like that. I was talking to actually an opinion editor on the phone, an ex-opinion editor on the phone last night, and they were shocked. They told me that they were surprised by the fact that they are the new editors turning this into a mouthpiece for the administration.
Yeah. It is remarkable. We're not seeing this getting published in even Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal. We're seeing it in the Washington Post, which I think it does feel like a pretty remarkable turn and really sort of seeds the ground here that even in the main, quote unquote, mainstream press in Washington, that these voices, that this entire rationale is being promoted with, straight from the horse's mouth, like you said, from former Fox News host, now U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro. And some of these arguments are just outrageous on their surface. Remember, I think we saw this week, Jeanine Pirro was holding a press conference and she even said, I won't bore you with the facts. And it was such a tell about this whole thing, which is that when we get back to the bottom of what it is that's happening here, this is a wonderful distraction that has arrived, a gift by Donald Trump to help change the subject for all of his right-wing media troops, which are desperately looking to give him cover and find a way out of this whole Epstein Files debacle. Since we know now that Donald Trump's name is in there, and after years of promises that he's going to, and his allies from Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and others, they're going to release these files. It's going to be an epic bombshell. They're going to take down all of these disgusting pedophile elites. And now they say they can't do it. And it's been, weeks of outrage and fury. Well, here we are. Perfect timing. Now we can say, look over here at these liberal cities that are disgusting bastions and hellscapes.
It's very nice over here. And I got to say, it's a beautiful day outside. It's very nice in New York City. We don't want these people. We don't, Jeanine Pirro, you can stay out of New York. And we're not going to be crying ourselves to sleep if you don't want to live here. Stay in DC. Stay in the swamp, Pirro.
All right. Well, when we come back, let's discuss Alex Jones's looming Infowars nightmare. Welcome back. So, Oliver, this week we got some actually really interesting news. Alex Jones, the notorious conspiracy theorist who has been out in the farthest fringes of right-wing media for what seems like forever. His Infowars empire has really seeded the ground for a lot of major conspiracy theories that have since flourished in the years, and especially in the Trump administration. But one of the big ones was his lies repeatedly about the Sandy Hook families and their children being crisis actors, these children who died in this mass shooting. A judge this week ruled that Alex Jones's Infowars can be sold off to pay the Sandy Hook families $1 billion in defamation payouts that he owes them. Now, granted, his Infowars is not worth nearly $1 billion, of course, but it does mean that there's a good chance that Alex Jones is going to go off the air and that Infowars will be sold off piece by piece, the actual physical building, his microphones. I believe the social media handles, I'm not actually sure what the latest is on that, but I believe the social media handles and all of that will go away. And this is happening in a Texas court. I think the most interesting part of this, and this has been going on for a while, is that the winner of the auction last time around for this was The Onion, the satirical magazine that put up some big dollars and got together with Sandy Hook families, actually, to pull together the winning bid. And now this basically opens up the possibility that the Infowars, Alex Jones's conspiracy theory outlet, is now going to be pulled out from under him and handed over to maybe The Onion again, maybe somebody else, and turned against them, weaponized, if you will, in a campaign against these people who had launched these really vicious attacks.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, this is like, I guess, the end of Alex Jones. But in many ways, I think, John, and we've talked about this, I'm not sure that, Alex Jones was the person who pioneered the right-wing conspiratorial space, right? Like, if you go back 10 years, Fox News looked a lot more normal back then. People like Tucker Carlson were considered, to be traditional bow tie wearing conservatives. Alex Jones is really out there, and he was saying a whole bunch of crazy stuff, and he was really out there. And if you fast forward to where we are now in the right-wing media space, everyone sort of adopted his approach. I mean, the president of the United States is basically an Infowars fan, right? He subscribes to a lot of these conspiracy theories that you would have heard Alex Jones pushing, and they're crazy and they're just, uninformed. But it seems like everyone has had his, like, the Infowars DNA sort of injected into their outlet on the right. And so I think Alex Jones is going out of business, and I'm sure he'll find some place to like kind of prop up or whatever. But he's already changed the entire landscape, or helped change the entire landscape on the right. And so, I don't want to call it his legacy because that makes it seem like a good thing, but his legacy sort of does live on through the Tucker Carlsons and the Candace Owenses and the Sean Hannitys these days, and Donald Trump, because he led the way into this crazy land. And, he might be leaving it or being banished from it or having his microphone volume turned down, but everyone else is right there now.
Yeah, and I think that actually he has shown other big right-wing personalities like Candace Owens and others that there is a lot of audience and therefore money to be made in the conspiracy theory world, where you're just whipping up little tiny grains of truth and amassing a massive conspiracy theory out of them. If you're a podcaster or you're working, let's say you do a daily show, a broadcast, you need a show every single day to put together. What are you going to talk about? And there's a lot of boring things out there in the press to talk about. But what's really exciting is telling your audience something that's going to like blow their mind. And that's because it's probably not true at all. And I think that Alex Jones has shown the right-wing space that like you can be very successful by telling your audience stories that they want to hear. And he has been successful also by monetizing that. He built his online supplement store. He's constantly hawking these vitamins and supplements and Gorilla Mind, all these, all these crazy things.
Strangely, he looks more unhealthy than anyone. So I don't know if he's the best person to be hawking this stuff.
Yeah, and so
Don't give me his skincare routine, okay? We do not want the Alex Jones skincare routine.
And so I think that what he has shown here is, like you said, that actually this is a very fertile ground that that right-wing personalities can really dig into, and Donald Trump has really embraced that. I mean, he's very much the conspiracy theory president and opening the doors to all sorts of things. I would say though that even if Alex Jones loses Infowars in the weeks and months ahead, that and this is a big win for the Sandy Hook families, who really went through an absolute like terrible phase where he was telling his audience that these were not real children, that these adults that are going out there crying, talking to the cameras about what happened in Newtown, that they were liars. And there were protesters and people who would go to their funerals and do terrible things to them. And I do think for them that this is a really monumental moment for them, in which they are getting some of that, like revenge on Alex Jones. They're getting a little bit of justice that they had really have lacked all this time. But I don't think this is the end of Alex Jones. What do you think?
I don't think so either, John. I think his platform will be reduced quite a bit probably in the wake of this, and we'll see how it plays out still. But I cannot imagine Alex Jones going anywhere forever. And we'll still see who's going to buy this thing, right? Like, it's possible, The Onion won the auction last time around. That doesn't mean that an ally of Alex Jones won't win the auction this time around. Maybe Tucker Carlson says, I want to partner with you, buddy. He's, they're friends now, and maybe they go into business together. Maybe Tucker Carlson buys Infowars. It would certainly fit his audience these days. And maybe Alex Jones is then given a platform to continue spewing his lies. I mean, we don't know who's going to buy this thing. And so I think that's something to keep an eye out for too. But even if an ally of Alex Jones does not buy this thing, I can't imagine that he just goes and disappears. He has I think he has certainly a craving for attention. And I also am curious how people like Donald Trump react to this. And does someone like Donald Trump prop up Alex Jones? We'll see.
Yeah. It's gonna be fascinating. Actually, I do think that now that we live in a very social media friendly environment, that there's nothing stopping Alex Jones from continuing to do what he does. And that means you just get a new handle on X, a new website. We've already seen him go on his show and talk about, you got to join the Alex Jones Network, which is a separate entity. There's a new supplement shop that he swears is not connected to him. Got to go buy your supplements there because we need the money to keep going, keep us fueled up and alive. I do think that Infowars can get sold off, and you see him continue to be out there in the space. And I think that the incentives are there.
Well, we're also living too in a totally different political moment than we were when Alex Jones was deplatformed and, thrown, kind of exiled, right? And we're living in a moment where platforms like Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg are desperate for Donald Trump's approval. And Elon Musk is now in charge of X and happy to allow Alex Jones back on there. And I wonder if that could also help him in this moment. If there's pressure on Mark Zuckerberg to allow, the algorithm on Instagram Reels to carry Alex Jones, or on TikTok, which also needs Donald Trump's approval. This is a different political moment, and it will make it easier for Alex Jones to find a way to thrive in the media information environment versus where we were just a few years ago.
All right. Well, when we come back, we'll discuss Taylor Swift's big podcast debut and her new album. All right, we're back. Oliver, so this week, Taylor Swift is making a really big splash, showing up on her boyfriend's podcast, sort of unannounced, right? There was this countdown clock on her website, and then we see her show up on her boyfriend, Travis Kelce's podcast, New Heights, along with his brother, and she's on the show, and she's announcing her 12th studio album, The Life of a Showgirl. Her fans are going wild. They're super stoked about this. Number 12 is it's got to have 12 new songs. The album is out on October 3rd. Everybody's really excited. I almost feel like maybe too many people are excited.
Yeah, John, I feel like you're not very excited.
I will confess I'm not a Swiftie. This is a couple albums ago, 1989. I thought that was a good album.
That was not a good album. That was the worst album.
I definitely did not get into Taylor during her country music days. That just did not do it for me.
Classic. That was the best.
So Cruel Summer was okay. It was fine. It was a little nice summer bop. But I don't know. But we saw brands and news organizations go all in on this week. That it's been a full cultural takeover. It's like an unavoidable thing. Even if you were like, I don't listen to Taylor Swift, I'm into hip hop, or I'm into country music, you cannot miss the fact that she has this new album coming out, and that there is this, every brand seemingly on social media has changed their color scheme to this orange and was it turquoise, a green, to match the color of her album.
Look at what we did. If you're watching the podcast, our logo is also orange. We were just setting the stage, paving the path for this moment. This is a year in the making.
I told you Oliver was a big Swiftie fan. It makes a lot of sense now. It's all part of the plan.
We lent her status orange for this.
So she goes on the New Heights podcast, and this thing, I looked at it today, it's got over 11 million views. That's quite a few views for a podcast on YouTube alone.
Almost as many as this gets.
Almost as many as Stash. She's got
Yeah.
She's got something to look up to now. It's good for her and her career. But what do you think about this rollout? It's a bit unusual. This is not unlike anything we've really ever seen before from her.
I mean, it was, I guess, interesting that she went on a podcast because we've never seen her in a long form setting like that. I thought it was kind of boring, to be quite frank. And I thought it would have been more interesting if she were like on Alex Cooper's podcast, where she's not necessarily in a safe space. And it's a little bit more like something interesting might happen here. I think, like, to me, I don't know. I just didn't really get much out of this whole thing. And I know that I might be in the minority of people that think that. I don't know. I just didn't. It was fine. It was fine. She announced her album. I thought the hype leading up to was more interesting, I think, than the actual podcast itself. I thought it was really cringe, John, though, how so many brands have been so desperate to like try riding her coattails and like, you know, cashing in on the Swift stuff. It's almost annoying. Like I like Taylor's music. I think she's a great artist. I've thought that for many years before I think everyone else like got on this bandwagon. I was listening to her country stuff and I thought she was a great lyricist. But like the, I don't know, act of like now being a Swiftie and like all these brands are just trying to desperately like, you know, hang on to her coattails and like catch a little bit of the momentum. It just strikes me as super cringe. I don't know.
Yeah, it's too much. It's too much. It's like we're gonna have like
It's
orange
embarrassing.
and green Skittles and Oreos and Coca-Cola and I was a little surprised that CNN did a live blog on the announcement. They had it up at the top of their website, and you can read through as these announcements were happening. Like mainstream press was covering this. Like
it was like on the live blog though. It was
announcement.
like the developments with like Putin, right?
Yes.
And then it was like Taylor Swift announces her album formally.
It literally
and there
was
wasn't even any
Ukraine war
news
update.
though. There wasn't really any news in this thing. It was just like, oh, like she showed how much she loves Travis because, you know, they were like emotional or whatever. She got emotional when she got her master's. And I'm like, okay, that's not really groundbreaking news. I think the most interesting thing, I guess, is the cover art and the track list. But that's not warranting like news alerts or urgent, you know, news pushes or on your phone. I mean, maybe for that, but I don't know. It just, to me, it seemed way over the top from everyone. I went to google.com and there's like orange confetti when you Google her name right now, which is like, in the United States, we don't really prop up everyone to the level of kings and queens, but it feels like in this case, it's almost getting as close as possible to like making her and Travis royalty. And again, I kind of like the Chiefs actually. And I like Taylor's music quite a bit. I actually wrote a whole thing when I was at CNN about how the Tortured Poets Department was a very good album, and how a lot of people that were saying they were wrong, and they were wrong. It was a very good album. I still listen to it occasionally, but this whole act of like, you know, I don't know. You get what I'm saying, I think.
Oh, I do. I remember.
It's not because I'm sore that she didn't come on our podcast either. Okay. But we'll still have you, Taylor. We'll still have you on the podcast if you are one of our many listeners. You know, we're happy to have you anytime you want. Maybe John isn't, though. I don't know. John might not be.
I do remember our fierce debates over Tortured Poets Department. That was definitely not my favorite album. I was like,
much better than 1989.
This is a snoozer. It's great music. If you're ever up late at night and can't fall asleep, what is going on? Maybe I should take some Ambien. Turn on the Tortured Poets Department. You will sleep like a baby. It's fantastic for that.
Now, do you think that she's setting the stage to go to Vegas to go to the Sphere?
Oh my gosh. Is she going to do a Sphere show? That would be great.
Do you think the showgirl thing is like leading up to that moment where she's in Vegas as a showgirl and at the Sphere?
I didn't even connect those dots. Yeah, that'd be perfect for her.
The Backstreet Boys look kind of cool.
You would like Backstreet Boys. That sounds right up your alley.
It's like, it's a throwback to the 90s. It's nostalgic.
What I'm glad we did learn today, though, is that that Oliver has the musical taste of a 13-year-old girl between Taylor Swift and the Backstreet Boys. So,
You know what? There are a lot of people out there who probably agree and they just want to admit it. So you know what? I'm comfortable enough in my own skin to tell you that I listen to Taylor Swift, and the Backstreet Boys at this Sphere look kind of cool.
All right. Well, that's it for us this week. Oliver, it's been a lot of fun this week. Looking forward to this album release in October. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'll catch you next week.
See you, John.
Power Lines is presented by Status and hosted by Oliver Darcy and me, John Passantino. The show is produced by Matt Havia and Antonio Enriquez in association with In the Arena Studios. Please like, share, and subscribe to Power Lines on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen, and watch full episodes and clips on our YouTube page at Status.